everyone. My name is Kay. I'm one of the organizers of this event, Internet of Things, New York City. My co-organizer, I cannot find him right now. I keep losing, right there. His name's Art. Raise your hand, Art. Okay. So we are the organizers of this event. This is our third event. I'm really excited to have you here. I'm really impressed, a bunch of people showed up. Thank you for coming. And I will not talk too much. This is our website, and we are, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and etc. And one of our sponsors who pays the pizza, I want to show their video right here. They're from Italy, Italian company. They sent us a video. I'll start with this video. And
hello, my name is Claudio Carnevali, and I'm co-founder and CEO at Openpicus. Today, I want to show you something that will change definitely the way you approach to the IoT hardware. This is Flyport. It's a programmable and connected module, only one. Flyport is available in 3 compatible versions with Wi-Fi, with GPRS cellular, or with Ethernet. Flyport is the best platform for the IoT because it's low power and it comes with our free IDE that lets you create amazing applications such as connected sensors, home automations, smart objects, and many more. Flyport lets you scale. It's not just a great tool for prototyping. You can create end-user products. More than 3,000 companies are embedding Flyport into their products right now. Today, I also want to show you our new product, the IoT Kit. The IoT Kit is a very small carrier board for Flyport, and it's compatible with more than 80 different sensors and actuators. So, I'll plug Flyport into the IoT Kit. And now I can also plug a sensor. For example, I have a distance sensor here. I can plug it here. And that's it. Because for any sensor, we give you a free library. So just plug the device and start coding. The IoT now is a matter of minutes, not anymore struggling with the prototyping, soldering, and the hardware. Thank you very much and enjoy this event. Don't forget to visit our website www.openpicus.com and follow us on Twitter. Bye.
Okay, here's our sponsors, Openpicus. They have really cool stuff actually. It's not on this video. If you have any question about Openpicus, I might help you and I can hook you up with these people. And let me introduce you our first speaker, Peter from BugLabs.
All right. That's pretty good. Let's hope the rest of my demo goes so well. My name again is Peter Semmelhack. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I'm thrilled. So what I like to do is go through a few slides, not too many. I only have about 300 or 400. And then we're going to go to a demo immediately because I think the demo will draw out a lot of what we're talking about here in slideware. But just to get started, so I understand the audience, the demographics of the audience, how many software engineers do we have here, software people in general? How many hardware guys or women? How many don't know what they are? Now the reason I bring that up is because the Internet of Things is an interesting place because it requires both software and hardware skills. And we'll get into why that's important, but in most cases what people are buying, what companies are buying, is not one or the other. If you think about Nest is a good example where you have the hardware, you have the software. In fact, even Openpicus is talking about the need for hardware skills in the Internet of Things, and that's important, and we'll talk more about why as we go along. Quickly, BugLabs. BugLabs was founded back in 2006. In fact, it was founded around a premise which is very much like Openpicus, if you think about it. We were, back in 2006, one of 3 companies doing open source hardware. It was BugLabs, Arduino, and another company called Chumby on the West Coast. And if you were to do a Google search back then of open source hardware, you would have found those 3 companies. Today, it's a much bigger thing. So we've been doing sort of Internet of Things type projects for quite some time. We focus predominantly now on the software side of things because hardware as you can imagine, is extraordinarily complex, especially when you think about the Internet of Things, because the Internet of Things is not a thing. It's lots of things. And there are all kinds of things, everything from 8-bit processors to 32-bit, 64-bit processors. It's a huge range. And so being in the hardware space is complicated if you want to get scale. So as a company now, we have a couple of products that I'll be showing you. One's called Dweet, the other's called Freeboard. And those are tools that allow you to connect things to the internet very quickly and then build applications using them. The other thing is that last year I wrote a book called Social Machines, which came out of all the work we've been doing lately. And social machines, as you can tell by the name, implies a interesting sort of movement that we see happening now, which is devices being connected to the internet, but not just because they want to do things like remote monitoring, but because they want to participate in social networks, right? So if you think about now, I'll bring up Nest again, or even the Kindle, you have devices that are participating in social networks as if they are peers in the social graph. And that's a greenfield opportunity, I think, in lots of ways, for businesses to add value to what's normally some fairly boring kind of connectivity solutions. And we'll talk more about that. But I actually brought a number of books. If anyone's interested, I have about, I think, 5 or 6 left. If you're interested, you can come and see me afterwards. Okay, so just quickly, the Internet of Things. I have a half an hour, right?
Yeah.
I gotta be careful because I can yak on and on. The Internet of Things, everyone's heard about the Internet of Things, and large companies have been talking about it in lots of different ways. The Internet of Everything, Smarter Planet, the Industrial Internet. And I had an interesting conversation a couple of years ago with a guy named Randy Commissar, who is the one of the partners at Kleiner Perkins. He was one of the initial investors in Nest. And he said this, he says, I think the next Facebook is going to come out of the Internet of Things. And I sort of took him to task for that because one of the things that you have to recognize about the thing that Mark Zuckerberg came up with is that, when he came up with his idea and went out into the public with it, it could go, quote, viral, because for the prior 20 years, all of us had been busy acquiring basically a standard hardware software stack that he could run that on. So everyone had a Wintel machine, right? Some sort of Intel processor or a Mac. Standard operating systems in the form of Windows, Mac OS. Standard browsers, standard network protocols, standard languages, everything was standardized. So I could come up with an idea and baby, infant, come on in. And so,
youngest member.
That's right, a coding genius.
He's 9 months old.
You never start too early around here. But so Mark Zuckerberg could come up with this great idea. We could all use it immediately, very little friction, because we all had the hardware device that we needed to run it. Okay, so you could become Facebook very quickly, very little friction in that world. But now let's say I came up with a really cool idea for diabetics. Okay, it's an application that would make the lives of diabetics far easier. Well, none of our phones today have glucometers on them. None of them have devices that would be necessary or interesting for my application to use. So step one of the Internet of Things is I have to get the device to the public before I can write an application for it. And so what this slide kind of shows is what the big problem now with IoT is that it's extraordinarily fragmented, because on the one hand, you may have somebody making an air conditioner that requires a 16-bit processor, doesn't run an operating system at all, uses a completely proprietary serial protocol, right? But on the other side, you may have an automobile which runs Linux, device drivers, everything's open source. And so if you want to create an application that somehow spans all of those pieces, it's very complicated. There's no way to go viral in this market today, because there's no there. There's no devices just waiting for the Mark Zuckerberg moment, right? And so for all of you who are in the space, especially if you come from the world of software, there's sort of this jolting realization that the application, the idea that you have, needs to run with hardware, right? And in many cases, if not most cases, the hardware you're talking about is proprietary, it's tiny, runs on a battery, does not run an operating system, and so that world is fairly complicated. And so you end up with what we call sort of the long tail of the IoT market segment, where you on the left, you may have some giant markets that we are still figuring out what they might be. Maybe one's home automation. Maybe Nest has got it right and they're going to own the home. I personally don't think so. The other thing is automobiles are another one potentially. But all of these markets are extraordinarily idiosyncratic. And so, throw this into the mix, and now you got companies like Gartner. This is how many of you guys have heard of this graph? It's called the hype cycle. They come out with this every year. This came out last July, so they're due up to do another one. But if you look at this here, this is the idea of like everyone getting excited about the internet or about an idea. So in here you have human augmentation, electrovibration, prescriptive analytics. The Internet of Things was here last year, and it's going to peak out in wearable user interfaces at the top, and then all of a sudden you have this thing called the trough of disillusionment. It's a very steep curve here. And down here you've got virtual reality. How many people remember that? Virtual reality? That's suffering down here. But then if you do your job correctly, you end up in the slope of enlightenment, and finally over here, right? And what Gartner predicts is this little yellow triangle means more than 10 years. Now that's probably over pessimistic, but it's a reflection of what we're talking about, which is that if you are an investor, an entrepreneur, someone looking at the space, you have to be realistic about what the possibilities of scale are and how they will materialize. And this goes to a little bit of what I was saying before, is that even the term Internet of Things is a little bit confusing because it's easy to say, Internet of Things, hey, Internet of Things. And it includes things that we know and understand, such as the internet. Everyone loves the internet, right? It includes this other thing called things. We all know what things are. We've been making them for millennia. And then you have this little problem, that little word in the middle, of. And this is, I think, where a lot of the problems resulted, because now you have the internet, which everyone understands, things. How do you get them together? How do you connect them in such a way that it adds value to an end user, but also makes sense as a business so that you can build these things and scale them, okay? And we all, like we mentioned earlier, we mentioned Nest, smart things, smart home automation. What are the verticals that are going to be really hot? And I just came off of 2 meetings just today with investment banks who are asking me, there's a lot of smoke, where's the fire? And I bet if I asked every one of you, you'd probably have your own ideas, which is good. That's the definition of an emerging market. But in there is also some challenges that we have to be aware of. So as I said, things are too complex. And then if you throw in other complexity things such as security, everyone's talking about security now. But the other thing I think is happening is that when you have very complex environments, opportunities arise that have to do with vastly simplifying it. And what we call this Dropbox moment. We think there's this opportunity for a Dropbox moment in the space. And what that means is that if you look at the technology providers in the space today, whether it be IBM or BugLabs, for the most part, we're all using the exact same technology. And I mean that literally. I mean, the technology that everyone's using is internet technologies. They've been around for 10 years. There may be some little special tweaks here and there, MQTT versus HTTP, whatever. But for the most part, the technology that everybody's using has been around for a long time. And so I would argue that the space is not waiting for the next cool technology to show up to suddenly have everything take off. That's not the issue. The issue is adoption. The issue is ease of use. In the same way that Dropbox did not invent cloud storage, right? They didn't invent it. It's been around for a long time. They just made it very, very easy. They made it simple to put it on your desktop and now use it. And they basically launched an industry now where it's very competitive, but that ease of use, I think, is a key part of this. So in keeping with that, one of the things that we have done over the past couple of months is launched a couple of products. One's called Dweet, and if that looks like tweet, it's intentional. It's basically Twitter for devices, and we'll show you how that works. It's the idea of sharing information about a device very easily. Then another one called Freeboard, which is it's a really easy to use visualization tool for building dashboards, control panels, and so on. So you can put a device online using Dweet very quickly, and then you can use Freeboard to build an interface for it. And rather than talking about it, I'll show it to you. But one of the things that we've used it for in terms of our customer base is, it's usually industrial control, so you have pumps and heaters. We do a lot of work with building owners, folks with assisting living facilities to do remote monitoring of rooms and so on. You see tractors. We've done work with telematics. One of our bigger customers is Coca-Cola, who we're doing work with vending machines and so on. So Dweet allows you to connect those devices to the internet and provide an interface to them, and Freeboard allows you to build interfaces. So I'm rushing because I want to go show you the demo and leave time for some questions. So this is Dweet. It's a URL, dweet.io. And the fun part of this is I'm going to require some help from the audience. Everybody in the audience, if you have a smartphone, you can participate in this, and I encourage you to do so. Anybody who wants to, take out your smartphone, open up a browser, and go to dweet.io. It's helpful if you have location services turned on, because it makes it more fun. But do that. And then once somebody does it, I'll ask somebody to hold up a hand and volunteer. Because what will happen is that what I want you to do is when you get to the website, go to you'll see that it'll try it now button. And on your phone, press it. And what you'll see is a little box that pops up like that. And in this case, this is my laptop thing. And you'll see my tilt, XYZ, so that's actually literally the physical orientation of my, you see it's changing, right? So as I move my laptop around. And the lat long, which is the position. Okay? And now right below that, if you guys can see, there's a hyphenated name. It says pricey calendar. Okay, so Dweet, the service went and provided a name to my thing as it went and requested it, right? It's a unique name. So anybody who's doing this, you also have a unique name. So does anybody want to give me their name?
Probable circle.
Okay.
Probable dash circle.
Probable. So it's, hold on, slash probable dash circle.
Yes.
Okay, so what I have to do here is just like in Twitter, I can come up here in the URL, I say dweet.io /follow/probable circle, okay? So now, this is that gentleman's device. What's your name?
Mike.
Mike?
Yeah, Mike.
Okay, so now Mike, you can see Mike moving his phone around. This is his latitude, longitude, and that's his position of his mouse, right? So if he shakes it up and down really hard, you can say he probably had a car accident, right there, whatever. Right, so anybody else? Yes?
Clear.
Clear?
Dash. Quarter.
Clear quarter?
Porter. P-O-R-T-E-R.
Oh, Porter. Clear Porter. God only knows what that is. There's Clear Porter. Okay, so that's this guy. So I can, without any sign up, right, there's no registration, there's no sign up, there's no setup, there's no cost, there's no fancy header programming. It's like I can now take a device and put it on the internet. And anybody who has that URL, dweet.io /follow/clearporter, can see this data. It's pretty cool. And we'll come back to how you can change that, but right now it's public. So that's Dweet. That's all Dweet does, literally, is you can come to it with a device, request a unique identifier, you'll get it, and Dweet will then present it in what is a JSON format. So now there's Freeboard. Now Freeboard, if you remember, is a way to build a visualization of a tool of a data stream. And so now in this case, I'll go back to Mike because I know it's his name. And I'm going to create a new visualization of his phone. I'll add a data source. Now we can get data sources. We can get data from just about anywhere. These are some of the ones we have built in. We've got Dweet, we've got PubNub. There are other APIs we can add here. We have companies who are using Xively and other sort of message-based brokers. But this is a way for you to pull information from them. But Dweet's easy because I'll show you why. I can come in here and say, Mike, whoops. Remember his name was his thing name was Probable Circle. Probable Circle. All right, so now you'll see on the upper right it's being updated. See that's today's time. That's the current time. And now what I'll do is I'll add some widgets. I'll make a Google map. I'll come and get Mike's data. In this case, I want his latitude. And I want his longitude. Okay? And so now if this works properly, what you'll see is a map. And that's where Mike is. All right, so Radio City Music Hall. I know you can't really see it too well. 51st Street. So if you think about what we just did, I've never met Mike before, right? We've never met. He's not a plant. Website. unique URL. Data is given in a web-friendly format. A visualization tool consumes that data, presents a interface. I can come in now and add one more thing just to keep it interesting. Here's his x-axis. I'll create a spark line now so you can keep track of it. So Mike, if you have it, you got to put the browser front and center. There you go. So now if Mike was moving, you would actually see that little thing move along the map, and then you could keep track of his motion, right? And so again, I can keep doing this. I can do this for a while. I can add another.
So it's precise enough to measure just a couple of feet of movement?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, the GPS is very, very precise, and Google just maps it. So, and then what I can do from here is I can go down here to the share screen, and that URL is unique to this freeboard. So if I send it to everybody in the room, we could all keep track of where Mike is. Anyone want the URL? All right. Now,
turn this off.
yeah, exactly. Now, in reality, obviously you can press the stop sharing button, but also it only is working when the browser's up in front. And this is a demo, clearly. But the power of this is that, again, what I was saying, which we think is this Dropbox moment where if you make it easy, you make it simple, you make it free, a lot more people just start playing around. And that's exactly what's happened. Here's an example of a distillery, a whiskey distillery off the coast of Washington. And so they took a PC Duino, a bunch of sensors, put them on the internet, and used Freeboard and Dweet to create an interface like this. And this is live. So they're actually, it's a continuous still. It makes whiskey 24 hours a day.
But no free whiskey.
This is our favorite customer. Yeah, nothing free for me. But what's neat about this is that they now sell this as part of their product, right? So you buy the still and you get this. And for them, it's wonderful because they didn't have to do anything, really. They built this in a weekend. And that's kind of our mind is how it should be, right? It shouldn't require a $100,000 prototype, and they should be able to build things. And we've got, we launched the product in April, and we have thousands and thousands of users already. And no, not all of them are paying, unfortunately. But that's not really the point. The point is to get people to use it. And as a small company, one of the things that's good for us is that it creates this funnel effect where people start using your technology, and some small proportion of them want to then go to a larger deployment. But anyway, so this is kind of our first take at this. But as I mentioned earlier, where we've found success with this is things like this, which falls into our industrial control sort of vertical. We do a lot of work with retail. So providing interfaces to retail establishments, either for the retailer themselves or for customers who are coming into the store. It's kind of like if you guys are part of the Starbucks loyalty program, there's a lot of that interest going on where you literally can interface between your phone and a retailer in some interesting ways. And so I don't know where the real smoke, I don't really know where all the fire is. I know there's a lot of smoke, but this approach we feel is a good way to do it, because for our standpoint, it's very low cost of sale. Almost zero cost of sale. There's very little risk on the side of customers because it doesn't cost anything. They can do it quickly and easily. And then once they've shown it, they can hold on. They can keep it public and share it around for no cost. And our business model, by the way, is a lot like GitHub. So if right now, if Clear Porter doesn't want to have everybody know where the device is, they can come, and for 99 cents a month, you can buy a key or a lock. And so then that locks it down. So then anytime the URL goes there, you have to have that special key. So that's the business model. It's a public-private business model. So that's my spiel. Happy to take questions. Yeah?
Can you do anything? It's a passive interface that I see there. Can I take information from the passive interface and pass it on and move it to something else?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And I don't have time for the demo here, but we have this whole, it's called notifications and alerts. So let's go to this guy here. Obviously, no one's going to sit here and stare at that. Be like, oh my God, the main heater is not, So what you do is you set up alerts and notifications that basically monitor whatever you want. So you can have thresholds. You can imagine how it works. It's sort of business process automation, and it can do a couple of things that are simple. It can send an email or a text. It can send a URL, which is a callback. But it can also do some other specialized things like update a back-end CRM system and create a service ticket, say. Yeah. But that's a little more involved than I can do real quickly in a demo. But yeah, absolutely. And because, again, the business value of this stuff, this is all fun and easy. It's fun to show. And it's easy to show the demo, the value of this part. But the real business process stuff is where the value comes. Because then to your point, it's, am I using it to save money? Am I using it to make money? And in there's some finesse. But this really is just the on-ramp to all of that. And you'd be surprised how many times, like, prior to this kind of approach, you spent a lot of time talking to PowerPoint slides and convincing your audience that this is a good thing. Whereas this approach, if they start doing it themselves with their own phone, they start telling you where they think this could be valuable. And I think that's kind of what you want to do, is you want to get your audience to start thinking about it on their own. So, any other questions? Yeah.
Two questions. One is, can you tell us a little bit about how BugLabs has evolved its business model since the modules? And
Sure.
then secondly, it seems that the world is largely sensor-oriented now, and actuators have significantly lagged behind.
Mm-hmm.
Wearables is really about sensors. It's
Yep.
not about actuators.
Yep.
Have you noted that? Have you any thoughts about that?
Sure.
Peter, do you want to repeat the question?
Yeah, I was going to read the question, yeah. So there was two questions. One was, talk a little bit about the evolution of BugLabs from where we started to where we are. And what are my thoughts on the world today, whereas it seems like it's very sensor-oriented and not so much actuator-oriented. So quickly on the first piece, BugLabs has been around for 8 years, so it's a two-beer story. I'd be happy to go out there and tell you all about it. But in reality, what happened was, when we got started, the hope around open source hardware was that we would find a Red Hat type business model, meaning the IP would be free and you'd wrap services around it in the way that Red Hat did. In fact, Bob Young, who's the founder of Red Hat, is an investor in BugLabs. Long story short is that never happened. It never materialized. And I, quite frankly, don't think it ever will materialize, because one of the precepts of open source software is that the distribution part is free, right? There's zero friction in distributing software. That is not true in hardware, right? I can't come up with a thing and send it to 1 million of my friends for nothing. And so it becomes complicated to have a business model which looks the same. And so we evolved to really what is a SaaS model today. All of our software is available in the cloud. And so we don't do hardware really at all anymore. We will design custom hardware for customers, but we don't make our own anymore. And that was really just purely economic. It's a very, very complicated world to live in. It's very expensive. So the second part of your question was actuators versus sensors. I think a little bit is just the market is in the position of what the gentleman in the back said, which is they're just excited about seeing this stuff, right? They're like, oh my God, I can see a graph, and that's sensor, right? So that's like the Fitbit. I'm gonna, oh my God, quantified self. I can see my heartbeat. I can do something. The actuation part is a more mature step, and I think we're starting to see it. But it requires, it's what we call command and control. And it's just, some businesses want to go there immediately because they trust it, some don't. The actuation usually implies more risk because you're doing something, as opposed to just reading and that's fine. You're actually going to try to do something, and that doing, if it's done wrong or if it's insecure or it's expensive, it's usually seen as more risky. I think sensors is far easier. It's cheaper, less risk. But the actuation is, there's a lot of business value in that. But I think you'll start seeing that coming a little bit later. It's my feeling. You can do it today, but yeah.
Are you starting to see a marketplace for the data that's coming out of these? I guess, for example, Twitter, you had GNIP would collect all that data and licensing. Are you starting to see that, or do you think it's still early on that?
Well, it's definitely early. I think everybody understands the value of that data. I think the problem in general with that kind of data is it's not, because it's so fragmented, it's hard to normalize it in any real way that makes sense at an aggregate level. And anybody who's in big data knows that one of the biggest problems is getting clean data that you can then, and especially when you're talking about industries, let's even talk about the automobile industry. Ford is a big customer of ours. And so you'd think that Ford as a company would have sort of a standard way of having cars, dispense with their data. Well, guess what? They don't. It's not even it's not even just between like the F-150 pickup trucks and the Focus. It's like a Focus from 1995 and a Focus from 2006. Like it's extraordinarily customized. And so to try to roll that up in some way is just an enormous task. And I think for things that have to do with government, municipalities, where they've forced data to look a certain way from the beginning, you'll see some interest in that. But I think big data is a great idea, but garbage in, garbage out, and right now we're in the garbage collection phase, or I shouldn't say that, the pure data collection phase. Any other questions? I'll be around afterwards too, so I'll be happy to talk to you then.
And mention about the books.
Yeah, and anybody interested in a book, come see me. All right, thank you.
So, next one, oh yeah, is my old friend Lars. He is the CEO of Oval, is that right?
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Lars. And I'm the co-founder and president of Oval Digital. And we have invented, an amazing sensor that protects people, pets, and things you care about most. I will show you a small video because I want you to meet Oval.
Meet Oval, a smart, easy-to-use, and versatile sensor designed to protect the people and things you care about most. It's small, discreet, and easily adheres to almost any object, sending an alert to your phone or email whenever its sensors are disturbed. Protect your loved ones by attaching Oval to items such as medicine and liquor cabinets, toxic chemicals, and other potentially dangerous items in your home. Monitor items in your business, dorm, or home by placing Oval sensors on your doors, windows, valuables, computers, or anywhere else. Oval sensors talk to their gateway through a wireless network, and hundreds of sensors can be connected to one system. And because the sensors utilize cloud technology, you can receive a notification, text, email, or even a pre-programmed phone call anywhere in the world instantly. Easily monitor and control your sensors from anywhere through the Oval website or with our smartphone app. And Oval is not just limited to sensing motion. Be notified of changes in light, temperature, moisture, or proximity. But that's not all. An integrated beeper and light indicator can even help you find lost items, pets, or people. Thanks to advanced low-energy components and state-of-the-art functionalities, Oval has a battery lifespan of up to 10 years. It's water-resistant, it's heat-resistant, and it's affordable. Oval is not just another gadget. It's a high-quality, industrial-standard professional sensor that's easy to use and a great way to protect the people and things you care about most. Oval. How will you use it?
Hi, I'm George, and this is Oval. It's really easy to use. Simply stick it, string it, or drop it in or on any object you'd like to monitor. However you use it, Oval will help you watch over the people and things you value most. It can also help you conserve energy and save you money too. We've been hard at work for over a year, researching, designing, developing, and testing this small yet powerful sensor. And now Oval is ready, but we need your support. By pre-ordering Oval today at discounted rates available only through Indiegogo, you'll help us mass-produce Oval sensors by allowing us to cover tooling, manufacturing, and packaging costs. Because of this, we'll be able to get Oval in your hands faster and at a lower cost to you. And we're continuing to improve Oval every day. We've recently evolved our technology so your other Ovals can help you find lost objects by creating a virtual map of your home or business. And if your monitored object gets out of range, our localization feature will not only show you which direction your lost item went, but it will also be picked up by other Oval users, sending you a notification every step of the way. This is just the beginning. There are many more plans in store for Oval, and we invite you to be a part of our journey. Thanks for watching and for supporting our Indiegogo campaign.
And this is the sensor. I give it around. You can have a quick look and play a little bit around with it. It's activated. It's on. So please pass it. Don't be afraid when it beeps or blinks. And any questions?
What's the price range of?
Momently, a sensor is around, momently at this time, because we still need to go into mass production, it's around 59. and there is some kind of starter kit. You need an additional device, a gateway, which connects all the sensors through this gateway into the internet. And one kit, for instance, a starter kit, which comes with one sensor and one gateway, is $79 momently on Indiegogo. We have launched
What
this.
about mass production? When you go mass production, are you planning for this to be below a certain threshold?
We still don't know momently exactly regarding marketing at which kind of price range we are going to reach, but momently we are on a retail price on 149 for starter kit momently. This is our. Yes.
Is there technology from the sensor to the gateway, Zigbee, Z-Wave?
Okay, the technology. It's first of all, it's not Bluetooth, because Bluetooth has too much disadvantages for what we wanted to achieve with our sensor. Because we wanted a notification time below 2 seconds. So if you stick, for instance, a sensor to your let's say bleach products in your home, you want to protect your children to gaining access to these products. When they grab it, you need to be notified within, for instance, 2 seconds. And with Bluetooth, when the device is in deep sleep mode, it needs to wake up to re-establish communication, and it needs too much time. And range, we will do 1,500, or let's say 1,500 feet approximately. So the technology is on 2.4 gigahertz. It's the same industrial protocol, the 802.14.3 like Zigbee, but we are not using Zigbee protocol because we wanted to shrink our payload message as small as possible. We are now on 30 byte, and we transmit in 1.2 millisecond one message.
So it's Zigbee hardware though?
Pardon?
It's Zigbee hardware,
Okay, Zigbee is a protocol. Below this,
it's the same hardware.
it's
The same radio transmitter.
It's the same frequencies or the same channels. Okay, yeah, it's the same protocol, right.
No,
Yeah.
But not Zigbee.
It's not the same protocol, but it's the same hardware, same radio.
yeah, okay, yeah. Yes,
How
please.
do you fasten it to different devices around the home?
Have we, sorry?
How do you fasten the sensor to different devices around the home?
Okay, it comes with a sticker. You can stick it and remove it. It's a 3M universal sticker. You can, and you can. It has also, when you get it, a small hole. It fits to your keyring. You can put it on your keys and on your wearable objects. Yes.
How do you know which one's which?
Which one's which?
If you have 10 of these around your home, how do you know which
Okay,
one's on the flex and which one's on the top?
everything comes with an app. Yeah. So you can set up all the sensors through your app. And also you can, for instance, if you don't know, there's multi-user functionality. You can assign different sensors to different users, like husband, son, and something else. And you can, obviously, if you want to know what is your sensor, you can make it beep and blink also. And otherwise, the sensor has a special kind of tap feature. It's like a mouse. You can assign a tap code to the sensor. So, for instance, tapping 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, you activate or deactivate the sensor. You don't need the app, for instance. If you plug it on your, let's say, notebook in your office, you need to go instantly into the bathroom. You tap 2 times on it, it's activated. You go away, you come back, you deactivate it. And in the same way, when you tap it on, for instance, you can understand what kind of sensor it is. Okay. Yes, please.
If I pick up somebody else's sensor, can I steal it or?
Wait. Okay, you mean, okay, let's assume the sensor is activated. The sensor has, internally, it senses motion, acceleration, temperature, luminosity, and moisture. So if it's activated for motion acceleration, when somebody tries to temper the sensor, it immediately sends out the alert. If you try to burn up the sensor with fire, the temperature sensor goes up, you will be notified. If you try to freeze it, you will be notified. If you try to throw it into water, you will be notified. If you try to shield it, because it pings out every second some kind of message, the ping signal will not come back, will not arrive at the server, and you will be notified.
Right. So if I took it and I took it to the next town over, can I then make that my own sensor? Can I hack into it, or is it just dead?
Okay, initially, for instance, if you have initially 5 sensors and you want to set them up to your network, you need there's some kind of setup procedure. It's very simple. You plug in the gateway to a local modem, Ethernet connector. Then you have, for instance, when it's a new kit, you have the sensor not assigned to nothing. You take it out. You need to approach to the gateway very close. We sense the distance. Yeah. So only you can set out the sensor. You tap on it 2 times, and then you see it on your app. It comes with an app. All you can access also through an internet browser. It's not only the app, yeah, also from your home computer. And you see new sensor. Then you can sign up the sensor. Once you can give it a passcode, you can assign it a special, let's say, a specific kind of user. And then once it is set up, it's your sensor. Nobody can access the sensor. If you don't want, you can say, for instance, this is a family sensor. It protects our main entrance. So you, your wife, your son, everybody maybe will get the notification and can access to set up the sensor. But you can say, okay, this is my private sensor only for my bike. Nobody needs to access it.
Just one question. How do you reset the sensors?
How do?
Reset the sensors.
Through the app. One time it's set up, yeah, to a specific user. Obviously only the user decides he can disable, kill, erase the sensor. Then it's like a new one and can be assigned.
That's the question actually. He says like, can I steal your sensor just tapping on it, reset it and go away? So we can't.
And connect it to another gateway.
No, I don't get this. Let's say if the sensor is new, not assigned to anybody, initially.
So you're saying once it's programmed for that base station, that's it?
That's it. Right. Okay. Yeah, right. And a specific user.
But can I sell it to somebody else and they can then...
He's going to steal us. What kind of business you're in? I will talk to you about this.
Okay, theoretically, because they are all compatible, but they are, okay, the communication is encrypted, yeah, so nobody can hack into it. Your data is safe. Obviously, you can reset the sensor into its original state and then maybe sell it, I don't know, through eBay to somebody else, and he can use it in his, obviously. But you need to reset. It needs to be erased, physically erased, because there's some kind of encrypted code inside. When you set up the sensor with some kind of hash, which you put it in, it needs to be erased in its internal flash memory, and then.
I mean, it's great to hear about the security, right? So.
Yeah, it's encrypted. Industrial standard IES 128.
I believe he's going to be around after this.
Yeah, I'm around. If you have additional questions.
How many sensors can you put in a network?
Okay, depends. Theoretically, over 1,000 of sensors can be connected to one gateway. Obviously, it depends what the sensor is going to do. Because if, let's assume, 100 sensors are sleeping, there's no problem, yeah? Because they ping to the gateway to say, I'm alive, I'm not tempered. You can program this interval, 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 1 month, whenever you want. And when it pings, for instance, there's communication. There's wireless communication. And when the sensor gets activated or disturbed by moisture, temperature, something else, it sends out also some kind of data in this moment. Let's assume there are contemporarily 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sensors that in the same moment trying to send out the message. Obviously, we get it because there will be some kind of incident, yeah? So there is some protocol which handles this traffic. But if, for instance, hundreds of sensors contemporarily are transmitting, it will not work, sure. So it depends how many sensors are active and transmitting.
Is it a mesh?
It's some kind of network, yeah, mesh network. Yeah.
And so, and what's the maximum distance between nodes in the mesh?
Okay, it depends. Physically calculated outdoor under best weather conditions, it's 1,500 feet. But it's relative because it depends on like every other product, yeah, on interference and like this. We have some special kind of antenna design in the sensor. It's patented. So we found the best way between transmission power and battery consumption, yeah. It has a high gain, our special antenna. It's a special kind of antenna. Because of this, the sensor is also a little bit larger than other products. I don't know where the sensor is now. You can open it up if you want.
It's sold.
You can open it up on the top. You see the circuit board. Right. So if you want to see the antenna, and on the bottom there's a battery. can replace it. I don't know if you have seen, the sensor is called Oval, and the internet site is meetoval.net. And meetoval.net, MEET oval.net, and it momently goes on our Indiegogo campaign, because we have launched 72 hours ago. We are at 6 or 7K, I don't know exactly, and we would love to have all your support to make this happen and to pre-order at a special discount our Oval sensor and kits. I'm here around later on, so
yes,
yeah.
Thank you
very much. Thanks.
Lars, this is awesome. I like it. Okay, yeah. Now let me introduce you one of my old friend, Narayan. He is the vice president of I cannot pronounce it. I'm sorry. InterDigital.
Hi everyone, pleasure to be here. My name is Narayan Menon. I work with a company called InterDigital Communications. I'm going to talk a little bit more globally about the IoT, and in particular the role of horizontal platforms and standardization in kind of bringing the IoT together to enable more holistic solutions and more interconnection, interoperability between devices and apps. By way of a brief intro, our company InterDigital has been in the predominantly in the wireless business for a few decades now. We've been around for a long time, innovating heavily with each generation of wireless, 2G, 3G, 4G. Very active in the standards, so some of our solutions, quite a few of our solutions have been standards aligned. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've made heavy R&D investments in areas that we believe will be key underpinnings of next generation networks. And we firmly believe the IoT is the key part of that, the key part of the growth in wireless networks and the growth in networks in general. So having said that, so when we look at the Internet of Things or the Internet of everything or the Web of Things, the various names given to this, right? We see this as being part of a living, breathing network in the years to come, right? One in which you have diverse networks, diverse device types, diverse apps all coming together in a seamless system, right? And some of this is happening today. You do have the different network types. People talked about the Zigbees and the 6LoWPANs and the Bluetooths and the cellulars, etc. earlier, right? But to some extent, these networks are still siloed. They're still distinct from each other, right? And today you have a certain level of coupling between devices, networks, and apps, specific devices talking through specific networks to specific apps. We expect this siloing to disappear and dissolve over time, right? And we think the IoT will play a big role in this in terms of creating this fabric where any app can talk through any network to almost any device, or at least various devices. So what does this mean, the IoT? People talk about the scale, the anticipated billions and trillions of devices. It certainly means that there's going to be an increase in traffic load. Right? Traffic is anticipated to go through the roof as this happens. So there's going to be scaling issues. There's going to be issues with respect to identifying these diverse devices, addressing them, reaching them, etc. And certainly scalable platforms and networks and interoperability will be key towards enabling the scale, enabling the IoT of tomorrow. One of the challenges I think the industry will have to work with is, and I think the previous speakers touched upon that, is the diversity in terms of device types. You're going to have very constrained devices with low footprint, right? The sensor type devices, which have limited memory, limited processing bandwidth, limited storage capability. You're going to have devices with long lifetimes. You're going to have some of these installed in factories, in industrial premises, and kept there, maintained there for long periods of time, with little monitoring happening to them, right? Unmanned to a large extent, without the ability to go in there, service them, replace them, etc. Many of these are going to be unwired, unchargeable devices. So what it means is that power consumption, low power consumption, long battery life for weeks, months, even years becomes paramount. Mobility requirements will range from pedestrian to, static to pedestrian to fully mobile, right? And we certainly believe that at least a good level of standardization is necessary to bring this ecosystem together, right? To enable all these different devices to talk to each other and to communicate effectively. But if you look at this, look at the ecosystem today, what we see is that it's fragmented. It is quite siloed. You have very vertical specific solutions today with little reuse across these different applications or verticals. So there's a need for horizontalization. Part of the issue is also the coupling that I talked about earlier, right? Specific devices, specific networks, specific apps, right? Coupled to each other. And also solutions, common capabilities like security, billing, connectivity, have to be implemented and re-implemented from solution to solution to solution. There's little reuse across the board. So what does all this mean? It means a lot of friction for apps developers. It means long application development times. It means a high cost of development. And this is accompanied by a lack of standardization as well, which means that all these devices and apps can't easily interoperate with each other. You have island ecosystems, right? You have a myriad platforms today, each one creating its own island ecosystem. But if you look across the board, if you look at a sampling of verticals, and I've got a few key sample verticals here, transportation, health, etc. And you look at some of the key functions that you will need in these applications, data collection, device management, security, etc. You find a lot of commonality. You'll find a lot of these things are required in a lot of these apps, right? And to varying degrees, of course, but there's a good degree of commonality, which brings up the point of, accentuates the point of horizontalization, right? There is a need for horizontal platforms that provide this common set of capabilities that various applications can use. And the idea is to offload some of this from the app developers so they don't have to create the security schemes, create the billing schemes, create the discovery schemes. That is there in the platform, inherent in the platform, and the apps can use them, right? So with that in mind, we started developing a couple of years ago what we call our service delivery platform or application enablement platform. And we believe a platform like this has to have a couple of components, right? It needs the lower layer is the connectivity layer or the gateway layer, and this deals with the devices. You're going to have a myriad device types. So the connectivity part of it deals with the device-specific issues, the sleep cycles of the devices, the device constraints, and it abstracts and hides these device-specific issues, these device specificities from the apps. So that's one part of it. And the other part of the platform is the service capabilities aspect, wherein common capabilities, like the ones I mentioned before, are provided by the platform and made available to apps through well-defined, standardized APIs. So that's kind of what we've developed and provide today. The other interesting thing is that as we look at the way the ecosystem evolves, right? One thing we believe is that for the predicted scale, for the promised scale, the billions, trillions of devices scale to happen, it's imperative we create a rich applications ecosystem. It's absolutely critical for this, right? On the lines of an app store model where the value of the ecosystem multiplies with the number of participants in the ecosystem. So the idea is that as more and more apps start using the platform, as the platform becomes more and more popular, it attracts more and more device makers, more and more users to come and use the platform. And as more users use the platform, it expands the addressable market for the apps guys who start developing more apps, right? So it's got a self-propagating, multiplying effect, a positive feedback effect that the platform can perpetuate, much like it has happened in the smartphone market. And in such a system, similar, akin to what is happening in the smartphone market, you have a system where the end user or the enterprise might actually subscribe with a network provider to purchase connectivity, for example, right? And might go to this app store or this marketplace to acquire devices, to acquire services, to acquire apps. And then part of that revenue flows back into the platform, much like you have happening in the app store case, right? You pay for discovery effectively, you know. So this is a model we see building more and more and more in the future. And we see this as being critical to create that multiplier effect, as I mentioned earlier, and to create that interop and the multiplicative effect that will enable this ecosystem and will enable the scale, basically. So what are some of the functions, some of the key features and functionality that an IoT system should support, right? I see this as the IoT is supporting a life cycle of functions, right? So the idea is, you have a system which is highly dynamic. Devices and apps come in and go out of the system, in and out of the system seamlessly. Information is updated in real time, and there's an explosion of information, data being created by these systems. So from a life cycle of functions perspective, you need to have an environment where a device can come in, can sense the environment, can discover services, features that are available in the environment, can join the network, connect to those services, connect to those other devices, communicate with them. And in turn, the system on the back end collects all this information that the devices send out. One of the previous speakers talked about I think Peter talked about the DWEET kind of product and effect, right? So this information is gathered by the system, it's processed, the system makes sense out of it, provides that, analyzes that, provides that to the applications, aggregates, fuses, analyzes the data, provides search capabilities, discovery capabilities, abstracts it, provides context, and in turn uses all this information to feed back into the devices, manage and control the devices better, and improve the service provided to the user, right? So it's like a feedback effect where the devices are reporting on whatever they see, right? I'm sensing the environment, I'm reporting what I see. The system on the other side, on the other end, makes sense of it, right? And provides information, not raw data, but information to interested users. And then uses that information, uses that data to feed back into the devices and control, manage, and provide better service to the end user. And this is a system where dynamic discovery and search will be key, right? So this is from the perspective of devices discovering services. I'm a device, I buy a device from Best Buy, I bring it home, I plug it in. In tomorrow's world, it's able to discover the services that it needs, right? It discovers what services are available, how much I need to pay for that, etc. At the same time, the network discovers that a new device has come on board, right? This system, with the scale that we're talking about, it's not going to be possible to configure each and every device as it comes on board. The network has to be able to discover these things as they come on board. So I've got some examples here in terms of some of the things you can do with some of the examples of the searches and discovery type things you can do, right? Like find me every smart meter deployed in this part of Manhattan since Jan 1, Or notify me of any new appliances in K's home, for example, Things like that, right? Very key, very, very key. And the IoT is also going to be all about data. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of data generated. And much like I talked about the life cycle of functions, there's almost going to be a life cycle of data processing aspects that the system has to support, right? Collecting, storing, analyzing, discovery, search, Also enabling sharing of data. This is going to be a key thing because this IoT is not going to be vertical specific or application specific. It's going to cut across applications. So enabling the sharing of data between users, enabling the sharing of data between applications in a safe and secure way is going to be absolutely critical. And what you're going to end up with is this publish, subscribe type of loop where somebody publishes data, somebody else consumes it, processes it, analyzes it, and republishes the analyzed data back on the system, and somebody else consumes that, right? So this is something that this transfer and processing of data will be very, very key here. And this is not just big data. Everybody talks about big data, It's a much used and abused term. But it's also what we call small data, right? And by small data, what we mean is data and analytics that is close to the user, close to the enterprise, right? So this is local to my environment, This is local to my home, the settings in my home, my preferences, It deals with specific, appliances and other, fixtures that are there in my home, right? It deals with personal information, like my healthcare information, vital stats, etc. Not necessarily information that may be used for the bigger good per se, but it can be used, harnessed, analyzed to give me better service at the end of the day, right? So that to my mind is critical as well, in addition to the big data that everybody talks about. So what we've been developing from a platform perspective is this horizontal service platform. And this has three components. One is a device component, and there's a gateway, and there's a network server. The device side, the device can be either a constrained device, a low footprint device, a sensor type device, or it can be a fully capable device, on the other end of the spectrum, a multimedia device. The gateway intermediates between the devices and the network. So the gateway provides the interworking between the local Zigbee, Bluetooth types of networks and the broadband network, the cellular network, the internet, etc. Right? It can also provide local capabilities. You deploy a gateway in the home, and some of the features that are made available to the user can be controlled locally by the gateway in the home. And then there's a server component which, most likely will be in the cloud and will provide the broader services to the end user, right? And will provide the web interworking and the internet working and the APIs to the applications, basically. So here's an example of some of the things that, a very simplistic example actually of some of the things you can do with this, right? So this is an example of hypothetical smart home energy management application. And this is using this platform to provide the smart energy management capability. So let's say in the home you have multiple devices. You've got smart meters, you've got data coming from the energy company, energy utilization data. You've got weather information coming from weather reports. I've got my car at home, right? And I charge my car. I've got an electrical car, and I have an electric car, and I'm charging that at certain times of the day. I've got fixed, appliances in the system, a refrigerator, TV, etc., which need to be managed. So the idea is that the platform would collect data from all these devices in a consistent way, right? And provide this data to the app, either as raw data or as process information, analytics, events, context information, etc. And the application uses this, kind of melds all this data together to provide the service. So for example, the app could figure out that I've left home, right? It knows that from either my smartphone, my location, or from the fact that my car has left the garage and gone out, right? And the application can adjust the heat settings or the AC settings at home accordingly to not waste energy. When I come back home, it changes, right? So this is an example of how different devices, normally these devices would fall into different verticals classically, right? Some of these would provide into home automation, some of these would plug into energy, some into transportation. But this is an example of how the platform can help you cut across these verticals and enable an app to provide this kind of coordinated service across the board. And this is another example of the same thing. And what this is trying to show is that as opposed to one app, from all these devices that are inside the home, there could be a variety of apps that are created. So here you have for lack of a better name, I called it PowerAid.IoT. So this is a charging application for my car, right? So this is figuring out, what state my car is in, what the power status is, what my electric bill is likely to be. It knows when the spikes in the neighborhood are likely to be, the power spikes, and it figures out what the best time of the day or night is to charge the car, right? Yeah, I talked about that. I've got a grocery app which tracks the inventory at home. It keeps track of what things are going low on the inventory scale and places orders for me. I've got something called a gadget detective, which is a troubleshooting app for my fridge, right? So if I have a problem with my fridge, which I've had several times in my home recently, it troubleshoots it. It calls for help. It lets me know what to do about it. And then there's a market research app, hypothetically, that might tap into all of this, gather data, and provide that to third parties. So it's just trying to show that you can create a variety of applications running off of these platforms that interact with a variety of devices, very diverse devices, basically. So one quick word on standards. I mean, one of our approaches within our company has been that we have been very standards aligned, and we certainly believe in standardization, as I mentioned earlier, to create this openness. And it's not to say that the standards will define everything, right? But the standards need to define, there needs to be a core set of functions that the standards define and make interoperable. Beyond that, there has to be proprietary innovation that various companies bring in. One of the areas that we have been focusing on heavily is the one on the left side, the service layer, the service delivery platform I was describing earlier. And we worked this into a standard called 1M2M. This is a confluence of 7 standards groups from around the world. ETSI, there's a couple of groups from North America, TIA and ATIS, a couple of groups from Japan, one group from Korea, China, etc. And what this group is trying to do is create interoperable standard for the service delivery platform type of capability, with open APIs that apps developers can use. Exactly the same model that I was describing earlier. Also looking at web internet standards, the IETF primarily, and also to some extent on the air interface side, on the cellular side, and the IEEE side of things. So in conclusion, I mean, it's what we believe in is you need the best of both the worlds. You need a core set of technology blocks that standards provide that people can use, such that the basic plumbing is interoperable, right? You can have devices and apps connecting to each other seamlessly. And then beyond that, you can have a myriad value-added services and apps that people develop, and where the real magic sauce is the real value is added, right? And we certainly believe this is going to be a driving model as we move into the IoT tomorrow. And that's the last slide I have. So any questions will be absolutely welcome. Yeah.
So a couple of things. When I think of InterDigital, if I'm thinking of the right company, correct me if I'm wrong, I think of you as a company that's done a lot of patent filings and seeking to create standards essential patents. Is that part of your model here, as well as potentially actually creating the software platforms? And secondly, the internet has delivered many of these things, not at a different scale, without any one company grabbing the right to be this service layer. And there's a lot of development and a lot of freedom and a lot of innovations happen because nobody owns it, nobody controls it. Why do you think IoT will be different, and you or anybody else, or IBM or any of these other companies that would like to have this, would have the right to build such a platform that people would sign up for?
Great question. I'll go to your first.
Just in case.
Pardon me?
Do you want to repeat, paraphrase it?
Yeah. Okay. The first question was about the company, and what he mentioned is, I don't. What's your name again?
Richard.
Richard.
Standards essential patents?
Yeah. Standard essential patents. He talked about the company history, and is that the same with this product, with this area? The second question was about the ecosystem as a whole. Richard's point was that the IoT is very unlikely to be governed, masterminded by one company or a couple of companies. So why do we see that as being different, right? Let me address the first question first. In terms of the company history, yes, we have been strong on the patent licensing side, but it's a somewhat little known or less known fact that in every area where we've done that, almost every area, we've also aggressively developed technology, right? And more recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've had this model where we've started R&D in areas, promising areas early in the cycle. And some of the areas where we've started the work, it's been 4 or 5 years ahead of the market, Peter talked about that hype cycle earlier, right? Some of the areas we were down here in the cycle, right? In areas where we see possibilities of taking things to product, we are doing that. So there's at least 2 or 3 areas where we have done that recently, including in this space, and I'll talk about that, right? So it's not just patent licensing. We have actively developed technology. We have licensed. Little known fact is that we developed, up until about 4 or 5 years ago, we developed 3G protocol stacks for smartphones, right? In concert with Infineon, which is now owned by Intel. That stack actually used to run on the iPhones, or the early iPhones, and it still runs on several Samsung phones. And we have a software licensing stream coming from those phones. So some of these things are less known. We are known more as a patent licensing entity, but it's true to say that In areas where we see the potential, we go all the way with product. And that's what we are doing here. Second question, I fully agree with you, Richard, that this area is unlikely to be commandeered by one or two or even three players, right? There is going to be some fragmentation inherent here, But what we want to see is not 1,500 different platforms, right? We do expect that it'll consolidate to a smaller number of platforms. It won't be one or two, right? But there will be bigger ecosystems that form, and that's the way we see this go. It certainly won't be one company or two companies driving it, But the idea here is to enable the ecosystem, right? It's not so much to control the ecosystem. The idea here behind even the standard is to create those blocks, those building blocks that people can use. How do you make the scale develop more easily, right? That's been the intent here, as opposed to trying to, or even assuming that one entity or two entities will control the ecosystem. Yeah.
Are you the same company that 20 years ago people were concerned you were hijacking the standards for the advertising? Is your company 20 years old or so, or were you involved with the internet advertising?
No, not with that. But we are more than 20 years old.
So
not
because
with, yeah.
There was, what I'm wondering is are you a private company?
No, we're public. We're on the NASDAQ.
And is your business model primarily like getting essential patents and so like let's say there's a standard like MPEG. So your goal is to get patents tied into the standard as essential patents, and then you get a percentage of that. So you would work with like MPEG Licensing Authority, MPEG LA, or whatever your equivalent is. So your goal is to get patents on standards and have them be essential, and then you get your revenues from being essential patents.
Yeah, that's been our model historically, although I would say in the last 5 years we have diversified very heavily into, as I was describing earlier in response to Richard's question, right, into technology and products. And we have at least 3 or 4 areas where we've developed and sold products, So
What
it's...
percentage of your revenue comes from getting essential patents on standards that the world needs?
Yeah, it is significant today, right? It is significant today. It's north of 80% or so,
Okay.
Yeah. But it's something we are heavily trying to diversify on, right? In terms of moving into the product space and doing products, basically.
Why?
Why? Because
It sounds like it's been working really well.
It's been working really well. But as in every business, there are challenges, and it's never the same over 20 years, 25 years. So you have to diversify. You need to create other revenue sources, And we do some of that organically within the company. We do spin-outs when we see it fit to do that. We do external investments, We're looking at all these kinds of options to create those additional revenue streams. It's a diversification, it's a desire to diversify, basically.
Yeah, I'd like to hear about more InterDigital, but if you have a specific IoT questions, please shoot them. Otherwise, ask him after this thing, because this is an IoT event, not a company what to do event. Do you have a specific question about IoT?
I was wondering how he's trying to get into the market. I know that you talked
yeah.
about.
Yeah.
I know that you talked about targeting specific devices. You didn't mention really which ones that they were. I think you kept them vague on purpose. But how are you trying to really get into the market? Are you targeting specific devices and building it out one at a time? How are you getting to the market?
Yeah, it's partly that. We have certainly worked with certain devices. We worked with the Arduinos and the Raspberry Pis and certain devices and got our service layer functionality into those devices. We are looking at open sourcing as a strategy to get this out there, give away our APIs, and the APIs would include some of the basic constructs to connect, device to gateway to server, the REST-based connectivity that we support between the various nodes in the system. So we're looking at open sourcing to enable adoption of this, right? Followed by some kind of a licensing model sitting behind that, basically. But we are working with certain types of devices to begin with. We are working with partners within the ecosystem to get this into, the cloud, get this into gateways, and the devices also.
What kind of partnerships are you looking for to help do that?
It's technology partnerships to bring in components that we may not have, right? Complementary pieces that we would need to acquire, right, or integrate with, but also go-to-market partners, right? Evangelization partners that can help us evangelize the solution, the platform, concept and standard, etc., and help us go to market basically. So both types of partners basically, technology integration, and go to market basically.
Have you thought about utilizing different school systems to try to adopt your open source solution?
We were just talking about that last week actually. So, yeah. We started thinking about that. Very good, very good point actually. Because some of in the past, if you look at something like MATLAB, for example, MATLAB was popularized through the university system. And today, how many people use SPW for simulation? Everybody uses MATLAB, right? Even on Wall Street, I think. It's a great source of popularizing solutions like this, basically.
You have a question, I guess. Yeah.
Great thing about standards, there's so many to choose from.
Yeah.
Do you see sort of standards in the IoT by industry? For instance, an automotive IoT standard, digital health, market, etc. And also a recent one that was announced, Fred, with Google and Nest and some others. Are you familiar with that? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I would say in terms of, I think there are two categories of standards here, right? One is the horizontal standards. That's the one I had on the chart there, right? But in addition, there are vertical, exactly in the lines of what you said, vertical specific standards. There's a couple in the healthcare area. Continua is one, WLSA is one. There are some forums on the transportation side. So you are likely to have those, right? And on the healthcare side, for example, Continua, there are Continua specified devices that are coming out, right? So one of the things we are trying to do is taking the horizontal platform we have and working those into those vertical specific forums, right? And bringing in those devices and tying those into the 1M2M based horizontal platform that we have, right? Both are important, We are not directly sort of aligning from day one with the vertical standards, but that's part of the integration path that we are pursuing, Yeah. Right. Yeah. Not terribly familiar with that one, to be honest. It must be recent. Yeah. Even IEEE is more on the horizontal side, I would say, because that's where the wireless LAN, wireless PAN stuff happens, right? 802.11, 802.15, the roots of the Zigbee, the PHY and the MAC for the Zigbee and 6LoWPAN systems. But the ones you mentioned will become equally important, I think, in the different sectors, right? And if you look at Europe, for example, transportation is big there. In all our dialogues in Europe, it's a big discussion area in Europe. Here in the U.S., we see healthcare, wellness more than healthcare, I would say. We see home automation under discussion. We see energy under discussion, right? And you're likely to see these vertical forums cropping up in many of these sectors, basically.
Any last question? Yeah, go ahead.
If you were to say to a developer what your major advantages for using your APIs and using intellectual property, and he was saying, well, I was thinking of using AllJoyn, the All-Seam Alliance, and their APIs and their open source code. What would you say is your strength compared to something like that?
I would say the primary strength is the level of capabilities we already support in the system.
Like more than All-Seam Alliance or
Yeah.
AllJoyn?
I would definitely say that. I mean, it's not just a connectivity solution. We provide billing capabilities, billing, security, authentication. We provide service discovery, device discovery, and several other features that you don't commonly find in some of these other systems and standards. Some of these systems, as AllJoyn is more of an open source type of framework, right? And then you have other protocols, other systems like MQTT, etc., that are in the mix as well. But when we do the comparison across the board, the biggest point of strength is the capabilities we have, I believe.
Thank you very much, Narayan. All right. Nice presentation. All right, we have two short announcements really quickly. I would like to invite Jenny from Techstars here.
I'll just stand here.
Right. Why don't you come over here? Just this
so,
one.
I'm from Techstars. I run the RGA program.
Do you want me to open up the RGA website?
What?
Do you want me to open the RGA website?
No, it's going to take 2 seconds. If anyone wants to talk to me about the RGA Accelerator, I'll be here for a bit. So we're Techstars plus RGA. We're a mentor-driven program coupled with RGA, which is one of the leading agencies around product design, branding, go-to-market. And we have a program that starts in October. And applications are open for 2 more weeks. So come find me and we can talk more. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Paul is going to talk about his gig. It's fine.
Jenny was nice enough to host us last night. It was a great evening. So I head up Wearable Wednesday New York. One interesting thing, well, we said a lot of interesting things last night, but one thing that one of our panelists said was that we could look at wearables kind of like our mobile phone in our pocket. We've been doing it for a while. You can't leave home without your mobile phone. If your phone dies, you're upset for various reasons. Wearables are kind of leading the charge on that hype cycle. How many people in the room are bullish on wearables and think they're going to make a difference? And how many people in the room feel that they're kind of very hypey and we're going to get past them real quick? All right, so more people like them than not, and some people have very heavy arms. But I'm gonna vote those as yeses. But basically, we're going to be covering a whole range of topics at Wearable Wednesday. Here, we're hopeful that we could work with Kay to do some hackathons and delve into fashion tech and different verticals. But basically, you could look at my Twitter, Wearable Media, and I'll be curating and covering the wearable space there if you just want to dip a toe in, and I'll be covering IoT here at IoT Media, and we're really happy to support Kay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we are pretty much done. Thank you for coming, and you can, still our speakers around here. I guess you can actually, if you have questions, you can ask them. And thank you again for coming. Thank you.